Okay, maybe we are starting. Okay. First of all, quick question. How did assignment 1 and all of that stuff go? You all did the assignment. It was incredibly easy and boring. Mildly, reasonably. Cool. I think I will post solutions or something like that rather than spend the time, since we may not have time. Now, oh, and let me ask you something. Have you installed any of these things?
Not on the laptop.
Can I download the clips?
Go for it.
And we're actually, you are going to have to download the clips eventually. Somewhere in here, you can download it. There. Maybe. It's 64-bit, right? Eclipse is actually really nice, especially for Windows kind of stuff, because it's just a folder. There's nothing to install. There is no messing up with your registry or anything like that. It's just a folder, which is really nice. Yes, that's what I want. Okay, it's coming. We have been using Java REPL. Why? Because it allowed us to start with programming and bypass oodles of extra manure that Java requires. We will see why we need the manure. It's not manure. It's kind of a barrier to entry that makes sense if needed. We'll see why it's useful. But right now, it seems like way too much. So let's talk about what a Java program would look like, right? Normally, what does your program do, right? Any program. You normally want to get some input, process it, do something with it, and produce some output, right? We're going to start with super simple programs that get super simple input and produce super simple output. But so this is our program. Can you guys read that stuff? We are declaring a class, which is required. And actually, I'm going to have to stop myself from doing that, because my finger doesn't record very well. We are declaring our class, and you can give it any name you want. Usually, unless you do magic, by default, Java almost requires you to have the same name for your class and your file. So it doesn't terribly matter what you call it, as long as it's the same as your file. So if we're calling it hello, our file needs to be called hello.java. Does that make sense? We are declaring that it is a class, and we are declaring that it is public. Public means anybody can access it. Anybody can use it. We will see sometimes you want to make some pieces of your program private to protect against yourself, to not let you mess up with the pieces. Does that make sense? Now, in Java, the input and output system ended up being messy because they did like 7 versions. And so this is kind of the nice version. it uses the scanner class. Now, when we do big programs, we may end up with hundreds of classes, right? In order to allow us to more freedom to give names to those classes, we store our classes inside packages. So basically, the full name of this class is not scanner, it's java.util.scanner. Does that make sense? And the dots serve almost as separators, as folders in your hard drive or something like that. Does that idea make sense? Now, we could write java.util.scanner here, but to save us typing, we can do this. We can import the class, and then after that, we just need to use the nickname. Does that make sense? So this is what, John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt, and here is just John. Right?
How does the program run without that line?
Without which line?
The scanner input.
The import, you will get a compiler error. Actually, let's go play. Let's create. Don't hate me. I'm going to copy it to your desktop. Is that okay?
Go for it. Just let find it. There's a guy one icon.
Oh, well. It will appear there.
If it's just a folder, it should be fairly easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When we'll do it in a second, and we'll play with. Basically, you get a compiler error. It will tell you, I have no clue what scanner is, because you need the full name. We could delete that line and write the full name, and then it's perfectly okay. Except that we have to do it twice, here and here. Oops. Which, as lazy people, we normally don't like to do, but you can. In fact, I tend to, many times, if it's something that's maybe gonna be just mentioned once or twice, I would actually write the full name so that I remember. Because again, as your program becomes bigger, now you start having 700 of those import lines because you're importing everything. And so now I get lost. And so I tend to write the full name of the class. But most people would not do it even for this, where you have to write it twice. Rather than write it twice, you would import it. That live. Okay. Ah,
I have all the stuff on my desktop, not on my.
can I install the JDK?
Sure.
Sorry. Well, maybe it's helping you. Maybe it's saving you time, right? Accept, and it is this one. Okay.
This program is just to print with name, right?
This program actually prints, please enter your name, reads one line, and then prints hello and your name.
Yes. So why we have to, why that import Java scanner? What is that? I mean,
This import Java util scanner is so here we can just type scanner instead of Java util scanner. Does that make sense? That import basically says, oh, when you see the word scanner, it actually means that full name. When you see John, I'm actually meaning John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt. Does that make sense? You can think of it also as establishing context, right? When you're among friends, you can say John or George, right? When you are in a bigger group, you have to say which John or which George. And so what this says is, if you see scanner, then it means Java with scanner.
How is that different from a macro?
Java doesn't have macros. It's similar.
Like C++.
Yeah, C++ has macros. C++ doesn't really have this same context. You could think of it as hash defined scanner, Java with scanner. But it actually has a little bit more. It's a little bit more specific. So it will actually, the compiler knows which library you have available, and it will let you know, oh, that class doesn't exist, right? It's a little bit smarter than a macro, or more tailored to this particular situation. But now, let me tell you this. Feel free to just take some of this stuff as gospel and cut and paste it, right? It will make sense eventually, but all the details, right, may seem overwhelming. This is one that you can safely use as almost cut and paste, right? I will just import this class all the time, because chances are that you're going to be needing it for a bunch of the programs that we're going to do. I will always do public class whatever, and I will always define my main method like this. Just cut and paste that line. Does that make sense? That's why we did Java REPL the first week. I didn't want to overwhelm you the first week. I wanted to wait until the second week, and then I can overwhelm you. Hopefully, now it's less overwhelming, right? Because you already know a little bit, and you already know that you can do simple stuff in Java. So now, yes, we need to deal with this manure. But so we actually are creating a new object of type scanner, and we are passing to that object this. Since Unix and C, right, we think of programs as having three standard things. You have a standard input stream, a standard output stream, and a standard error stream. And usually your operating system will let you redirect those to files and things like that if you want to. Normally, we'll not actually use our standard error. So we'll use standard input, standard output. By default, standard input is the keyboard, and standard output is the screen. Does that make sense? Did we ever download that Senge? Yay. Once we have created this scanner, the scanner class lets us do nice stuff like get me the next line, right? Or get me the next int. And it will actually read a bunch of digits and parse it and convert it to an integer. So in this particular case, we are printing. You notice here we use system.in for the standard input. System.out is something that we can write to, is the standard output, but it's actually a usable class. System.in is not terribly useful, which is why we have to create a scanner with system.in. System.out is actually reasonably useful. We can call printline, and it will print stuff, which is what we normally want. System.in, actually, you can only read like characters or bytes. That's not what you want. You normally want to read one line or one word or one int. And so that's why we need this kind of class. So this prints, please enter your name. Here we declare a variable of type string. And get the next line, and then we print. Actually, we need to know what strings are, right? Strings are words or phrases, bunches of characters one after the other. Does that make sense? Strings are actually very special in Java. They're not primitives. They're not like ints or doubles or those guys. But they have a constant representation, which is double quotes and the strings. So, and one other thing, and this is standard in Java, almost every class starts with an uppercase character. So it's string with an uppercase S. Java is picky. If you put a lowercase s, it will complain. The name is string, not string. We can use quotes. That denotes a constant. That's the string with the characters O and E. Does this make sense? That's the double quotation mark thingy. Standard thing. Don't ever use a word processor instead of a text editor. What happens if you try to use Word to do your program? Many of you submitted your assignment in Word. It is okay. I can read that stuff, right? But Word will happily correct you because in writing, there's actually two different double quotes, right? The ones that go to the left and the ones that go to the right. So Word will actually autocorrect that thing without even telling you and put two different characters. When you cut and paste that into your compiler will happily complain about it because it's a different friggin' letter. So don't ever use Word for programming. It's right. Of course, don't ever use Eclipse if you want to produce pretty documents. But.
So we should just use Notepad.
Notepad is in a pinch. Notepad will do. If I were you, I would, of course, download Eclipse, or at least download a Notepad that doesn't suck. Notepad++, a lot of people use it. There is another, and it's free. I actually like Visual Studio Code, not Visual Studio Code. That's just kind of a text editor. That is fairly decent. There is like Atom or any of a bunch of kind of simple text editors that just deal with text.
So I guess if we use Eclipse, then we would just take a screenshot when we submit it?
No, you would submit text. Actually, I will tell you, no, you will put stuff on the cloud and I will go get it from the cloud. Yeah. But strings are bunches of characters, so we can actually have one character, one letter, right? And we use single quotes instead of double quotes to use character constants. What's the difference between a letter and a character?
Letters the variable?
In this case, yeah, but in English. Now in English, if I tell you, give me a letter or give me a character, am I telling you the same thing?
Yeah.
Almost, right? Is one a letter? Is semicolon a letter? No, right? I mean, letters are A through Z, and characters include A through Z, but include all the other stuff. Normally, I would call it letter half the time, even though I mean character, just because in English we use letter. We end up with horrible things with strings. sometimes we want to put weird characters like tabs or a quotation mark. In that case, we use a slash inside the string so that we don't get confused. Let's go play with Java REPL and play a little bit with strings. All right. We can do and so actually this string contains 7 characters, right? The quotation mark, HELLO, and then another quotation mark. Does that make sense? And the printer is actually printing the extra quotation marks around. And in order to insert that character inside the string, we had to do the slash. Does that make some sense? Normally, you would never use this, or you'll probably not use this for the remainder of the class. How about that? But it's a good idea to know, right? If you see slashes, then you know that they're weird characters. And if you need to put weird characters, it's with slashes. And Google is your friend, right? How do I put the return character? Is slash something, but slash what? I don't know. Let me go Google or Bing it. We can ask a string, hey string, how big are you? And it will tell us. A.length will tell us. We can ask a string, are you equal to this other string? And it told us false. Notice, and I probably should mention this, and I will mention it eventually, but we use variable dot and then the method. So length is a method, equals is another method, similar to our functions, but here we put the object, a dot, and then whatever the method is. Does that make sense? We have concat, substring. We can do carat. What's the first character of that string? And it's a quotation mark, right? Because we did verbal length. If we were to do hello, then carat would actually be the H. Right? We had put horrible stuff into that string. Important thing, how do you count in Java and in every other programming language except half of them? 0, 1, 2, 3. Does that make sense? They lied to you in elementary school. You don't start counting at 1, you count at 0. Which ends up being a pain. I tend to do the first character, the second character, right? Or the character 0, character 1. So now you know about strings. And we know a little bit about our program. Maybe this has installed. What are you doing? Okay, you're cool. That's this guy. It's still going. Never mind. One more click. And maybe we'll get to run clips and show you all this other fancy stuff. I actually want you to do this stuff. Well, Justin, we installed the JDK. Eclipse, right? I also want you to get a Git client. If you are using Windows, this thing works. I am also asking you to go to Bitbucket and create an account. And then create a repository. What is Bitbucket? What is Git? What is all those fancy magic things? Normally, we deal with text, right? Our programs are text, right? Text files. We end up having many, many versions of that stuff, right? How do you deal with versioning in normal life? What happens if you are doing a Word document and sharing it with somebody else? And what do you do? What do you do if you have to do a document, like a big paper for English or something like that, and you have to do several versions of it? You have one on your laptop, one on your desktop, right? Dropbox, and then you actually keep one version? Aren't you paranoid? I used to do V1, V2, right? And you keep saving them with different names, right? January 31st, right? How many versions of your resume do you have on your laptop, right? That is okay when you have one document and a few things, right? It actually sucks when you're sharing it with somebody else, because then you email it to them and you make changes, and by the time they come back with changes, now it's never merged, right? So they change the previous version of the document, so all those team projects become a mess, right? Unless you have Dropbox or something like that and you all share the same version, right? What Git does is one of several version control systems, revision control systems. It basically keeps track of all your versions. And on January 17th, you actually changed this file and added these 3 lines to it. On the 19th, you deleted these 2 lines from this other file. Does that make sense? Now, where do you keep that? You keep a copy on your computer, you keep your local repository. You also normally want to keep a copy on a server somewhere. Bitbucket is one of those servers, right? They give you a free repository or a free account. You can have several repositories. And so you can keep all your source code. I'm going to ask you to go create an account, create a repository, and then give me read access to that repository. Does that make sense? How are you going to submit your assignments? Pushing stuff to this repository that you created and you gave me access to. Does that make sense? And then we got some Java done. Perfect. I don't need tutorials or any of that stuff. And we were about to conclude. Maybe. We were about to walk Eclipse. Not all of you heard me, but can I install Git? I was making fun of Visual Studio. All IDEs are big, unwieldy programs that suck. They are amazingly cool. They let you do magical stuff with your code, but they also are big and they tend to be slow once it's that they require a lot of your computer. And they all are amazing and they all suck, kind of in equal amounts. And then of course, since it's something that you're going to be using every day, you're going to hate it, right? There's two kinds of programs, the ones that people complain about and the ones that nobody uses. Right? If you're using it, you wish it to do something else, right? That's so I complain about Visual Studio and I complain about Eclipse. Windows protected my PC. Good. Can I run it? I'm horrible. I'm unprotecting your machine. Oh man, I'm terrible.
I didn't even give you a warning. I have that shut off.
It will never shut off.
It's really hard to shut that stuff off.
Yeah, especially Windows 10.
It's like every time I turn around.
Put it on the desktop now. Yeah.
If you want. Makes it easier for you.
Anybody else find it? This is the only thing where you need to think. You can use Git either from Bash only or from the Windows command prompt, or add everything to your path. I normally choose the one in the middle. How many of you actually use the Windows command prompt a lot? It doesn't terribly matter because you never use the Windows command prompt anyway, but I normally choose the one in the middle because I actually have 17 freaking command interpreters and I use all of them for fun. Like half the time I'll use the Windows one just because. Normally this is what you want, this is what you want, and this is what you want. Eclipse asks you where do you want to put the projects, and so I normally just leave the default. In fact, I normally tell it to shut up and never ask me again, but since it's his machine, I didn't want to do it. I'll let him do it the next time he runs it. In about another half hour, we'll get Eclipse. We're actually installing other program in the background. And we can do a tiny project and stuff like that. I think, yeah, in a way, this is the worst part of this module. There is an assignment. It has some fairly simple functions for you to do, but now we have all the fancy stuff. We have Eclipse. Let me do a new project. Initially. Yay! In Eclipse, you tend to have this thing is. I normally close the welcome thing. I don't normally want. By default, we tend to put the stuff in source, and we'll actually see that we actually make even more folders. Let me just make a class here. We can even ask Eclipse to create the main for us. Then we can come play. Um, ah, important thing, always indent, right? There is this inside or outside the method, or what am I doing, right? Always indent. It doesn't terribly matter which way you indent, as long as you indent. There are ways, never mind. There are ways to making this text bigger. Can you guys read? Okay, that's good. It's the way that I know involves the mouse wheel. Plus doesn't work. So we could run this thingy. Yeah, it always asks me. And woohoo! We can actually make it like the one that we had and come play with this. Doesn't tell me what. So please enter your name. Orlando. Hello, Orlando. Woohoo! What would happen if we don't put this line? Or actually, if we comment it out, right? 2 slashes, comment the line. If we try to run this thingy, it will tell me there is an error. I can come and look at the error. And tells me scanner cannot be resolved to a type. I have no clue what the heck that is, right? I could, as we mentioned, do this and then it would work. Does that make sense? Reasonable sense. Get going as fast as you can until right now you're probably gonna have a home, right? Where it all seems like it doesn't make sense. And when you get in there, right, you're gonna program and you're gonna forget a semicolon somewhere, and this stuff is not gonna work and you're gonna get frustrated. Get frustrated as soon as you can so that you can get unfrustrated as soon as you can. And then you figure out where the heck semicolons go. And then it will be a lot easier. Just try not to get frustrated Sunday at 9 p.m. when the assignment is due Sunday at midnight, right? Because, well, that's not a good idea, right? So try to front load your work, get frustrated today or tomorrow, ask questions, right? We'll figure out where's the semicolons missing and all that. You are actually gonna do slightly more complicated stuff because I am gonna require you to do where's Git? You install Git. Ah, I tend to, sorry, you can come and change it back. I have this terrible habit that I actually like to read what I have on my computer. So I tend to make these things big. Um, what I'm asking you to do is to create something in your documents folder, create a project folder. And then you would have created your Bitbucket thingy. I'm going to show you my repo. I've created my repository, right? And did I clean it up? I probably did. No, I didn't. I put stuff in there, right? And so if you go look at the repository, it tells you how to clone it. And so we are going to be able to do git clone and add that thing. Shift insert paste this in this thingy. I have instructions in a video where I tell you how to put the password in there so it doesn't ask you all the time. Since I'm doing it here, I figured I wouldn't type my password. I think in the video I actually type it. This is not my real Bitbucket thing. What this did is it created a folder. And in here is where you would be putting all the assignments. Does that make sense? So we are going to go and get from assignment 2 I'm giving you a zip file, which you're then going to copy to that place. In here, we have some interesting stuff. Git actually knows what we have. So if I tell you Git status, it tells me, oh, there's a bunch of stuff in the A2 folder, right, that you haven't committed or done anything with it. Eventually, you do git add dot and then git commit and git push to put it onto Bitbucket. But for now, let me do cd_a2, and you are going to have to do horrible stuff. /gradle_w. The instructions actually have the actual things, right? So don't try to memorize the sounds or anything like that. Build does everything. It goes download stuff. Gradle is a build system. Lets you set up a bunch of certs and say compile this first, then this one needs this other one, so go download this first before you compile this other one, all of that stuff. And so I have it set up. There is a million of those. I have no clue why, but Java sets stuff up. I have no clue. There is no reason whatsoever why it should be opening a port, but it does. Part of the build includes running the tests, and I have a bunch of tests. So in this case, they all fail, which is perfectly okay because that's what you need to do. Let me do Eclipse which generates the Eclipse project, or this folder, just in case you have it in a different folder. And then actually, let me go to Eclipse, import this thing, do file, import. If it's not open general, and then existing projects, next. If you go here, this is the actual assignment. I have created one read and double. And then you have to implement the other ones. Read and add, reads two numbers and adds them. Read and multiply, reads two numbers and multiply them. Print all operations, takes two numbers, doesn't read anything, just prints their sum, their difference, and all of that stuff. And you need to do something else with main. Let me cheat and let me show you the other thing. Because we have 3 minutes, 3 full minutes. These are all the tests. You're not supposed to look at this code too much, but all the things that have tests, right? And you can do run as JUnit test. This runs it, and it tells you what the problem was. I expected 579, but was 0. So I actually set up some input for you so that when you read it, right, the addition should have been 579 because it's 1, 2, 3 plus 4, 5, 6, right? So you should make this do the right thing, but we are going to cheat just to see what happens. We're going to, right? Hey, the test wanted 579. Let's give it 579. If we were to rerun this test, it would actually run okay. We get a green bar. Woohoo! We passed by cheating. You don't get points, right? I mean, I have to read your code after passing the test, but the test gives you an idea, right, of whether you did the right thing. You can actually do /gradle grade, and this gives you an idea of your possible grade. I still need to look at the code, right? But, so it tells you you failed this one, failed, da da da. So you actually passed one, and so you got 15 out of 75 points. Eventually, you should get 75 out of 75. I'm not testing the main, so that one you have to test manually. But that gives you, once you're done, you can do git status, git add dot. That adds everything. If you do git status again, now it tells you I have all those things, all those new files. Then git commit -m something, a2, whatever you want to have your thing, and then git push origin master. Now, if you were to go to your Bitbucket thingy, you would actually see that stuff. There is the A2 folder and all of that stuff. Does that make sense? This is how you're going to submit your assignment. Standard important thing. it is okay to submit partial stuff. If you submit partial stuff, you get partial credit. If you don't submit anything, you get 0 credit, right? So submit partial stuff, but make sure that you submit something that compiles. Because what I'm gonna do is after you give me access to your repo, I'm gonna run a program that goes, downloads the stuff from your repo and runs my tests, right? So if it doesn't compile, then you're in deep, deep doo. Make sure that the final thing you submit compiles. And as you're going, submit whatever you have, right? It should be almost like every time you stop and think, you commit and push, right? Because Bitbucket could go down, but the chances of it going down are much smaller than the chances of your laptop being destroyed, right? Which shouldn't happen too often, but might happen. So if you have this stuff, and also if you just forget, right? If you do something and you manage have the assignment on Wednesday, right? Submit it, push it, right? And so if something happens and you can't do it on Sunday, you already have the hack already in there. Does that make sense? So now go home, create your repo, download, play, submit stuff, right? Start as early as possible so that if you have problems, we can fix them as early as possible. Cool. Thank you. Thank you for lending me your laptop. Now, see you guys